and welcome to FPL Mate, your best move for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time to cover so much stuff. The game week deadline is upon us for game week 12. We've got press conferences, we've got injuries, we've got final decisions to make, including making transfers to some injury players and even captaincy to talk about today. So we're going to run through it all today. Make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe. Let's do this. Okay, so starting off with the press conferences for Arsenal, this is probably the big one of the week, and Arteta has done us FPL managers dirty. He really is not, he's really not made us happy at all with his comments. He's basically said that Saka, Nketiah, Odegaard and Jesus are going to be assessed over the next 24 hours before the game against Burnley, so we don't actually know if they're going to be available or not. What I should say is Nketiah has been pictured training, so positive news if you are an Nketiah owner at least. Jesus and Saka, they have been named in their international squad, so I don't know if that impacts your decisions. And Saka, he definitely did not train yesterday, but I have to say on Saka, often he doesn't train. We've seen before where Saka has not been pictured training and then he has gone ahead and played anyway. Saka is often on a slightly different training regime, particularly after kind of European fixtures. We do often see Saka on a slightly different training regime, so it may be that he is still available, he is still going to be playing, but Arteta is just not going to let us know. So it's a really difficult one. I think Saka is one of those players that maybe you don't buy him at this point, but you certainly, I don't think you sell him because he's got some great fixtures coming up still, and I think he will be back at the very latest for game week 13, so maybe you can cover it for this game week, but he's still a good player to own in general. But yeah, such a difficult one. I wish we had more information, but unfortunately we don't. For Aston Villa, Ramsey, he is still not returned to training. Diego Carlos is a doubt for this game week, and Alex Moreno is available for selection. For Bournemouth, Adams, Fredericks and Marcondes, they are still out. Scott is now out with a knee injury as well, but Neto, the goalkeeper, he is back in full training, so we might see him return to the Bournemouth team. For Brentford, Flecken is available. We had some worries last game week, but he is going to be available. De Silva and Lewis Potter, they have trained, so they could be available. Baptiste is close, but game week 12 is going to be a little bit too soon for him. For Brighton, it's bad news all over the place. Estupinian and Lamptey are both injured again this week. So, yeah, not expecting them to play. Neither with Dunk or Milner. They've picked up injuries. They're likely to be unavailable for this weekend as well. And Enciso, March and Welbeck, as we know, they are still out. For Burnley, Ekdal could be back for this game week, possibly. Benson played for the under-21s last weekend, but he's not going to be quite ready yet. And Foster, he is out for a while due to mental health issues. So, hoping that Lyle Foster can have a speedy recovery, get his head right and start to feel a lot better, because you know, you never know what people are going through in terms of mental health stuff. Like it's tough out there for anyone, no matter what situation you're in. So yeah, really, Lyle Foster, like the FPL community is behind you. Hopefully you can get back to normal, my friend. For Chelsea, and Nkunku, he could be back as early as game week 13, so things progressing well for him, but I think Chelsea are trying to be a bit careful not to rush him back. Lavia is also expected to be back after the international break, and Broja, he could be back with the team this game week. For Crystal Palace, Elise has been back in full training all week. That means he is going to be available alongside Eze. So Crystal Palace finally getting some of their attackers back, but there's still no return date for Henderson. So Johnston owners, you are still safe to have him in your net in your FPL team. Dice has said there's been a couple of knocks this week. Onana and Branthwaite, we know, have picked up knocks this week, but they have trained at least, so I think that's semi-positive news for them. Decore has been ill, but he is trained. I think he's going to be back to normal, absolutely fine for this weekend. For Fulham, Muniz has picked up an injury. He's going to be out for the next couple of games. Diop is still out, but Adama and Tete are now available. For Liverpool, Jones is out with a minor hamstring injury. This is not a serious injury, but he is probably going to be out for this game week. McAllister picked up a 5th yellow card, so he is going to be suspended for game week 12. And Van Dijk, he was unavailable for the European game, but he is expected to be back and available for this game week, so that's good news there. For Luton, still a lot of injuries. Anderson, Bell, Berry, Burke, Potts and Sambi Lokonga, they are still expected to be out. Kind of the manager kind of implied that they were still going to be out, and Woodrow is also going to be out for a few weeks now as well. So yeah, Luton Town not doing great in terms of injuries, so maybe an advantage, an opportunity for some Manchester United players. I'll leave that one there and you can make your own minds about that one. For Man City, Stones' injury is not as serious as first suspected. He could be back after the international break, but probably not for game week 12. Akanji, he is available. He's expected to be in the squad this game week, actually. And there's still no update on De Bruyne. He's that long-term absentee for City. For Manchester United, Evans did pick up an injury this week, a muscle injury, so he's going to be out for at least a little while. Casemiro and Martinez, they're going to be out until 2024, so, you know, at least a month, 2 months before we see them come back. And there's no new returnees for United either, sadly. For Newcastle, there's still no clear update on Botman. I think this one could just run and run. We just cannot get a proper update on Botman. I think it's a mystery, maybe even to people at the club, of what's going to happen with Botman. So, yeah, if you want to pick up Lascelles, it might not be such a bad idea. This could just run and run for a long time, to be honest. Isak is going to be back shortly after the international break, and Barnes has made some really good progress with his recovery and could be back shortly after the international break as well. By the end of November is the new target to get Barnes back in the team. So that may impact you if you're thinking about picking up a Gordon, because Barnes could take some minutes off him. And Wilson, he is going to be assessed. Apparently his hamstrings are tight. We don't really know if he's going to be available or not. It's going to be touch and go ahead of the Bournemouth game. And for Forest, there are returnees expected. Felipe Montiel, Origi and Wood, they have trained. Hudson-Odoi, however, has not trained this week. For Sheffield United, Brewster picked up a new injury last game week. Ahmedovich and McBurney, easy for me to say, are touch and go for this week, and Lau could also be back as well. For Spurs, another big one. Maddison has significant ligament damage. He could be out for months. The latest kind of estimation is between 1 and 3 months, so not expected to return this side of the new year. So Maddison is, at this point, if you have him in your FPL team, he's a straight away must sell kind of player. You just sell Maddison at this point because, yeah, it could be a while. Really, really bad news for Spurs there. Van der Ven, he's also going to be out for months, maybe even 3 months for Van der Ven. So there's going to be a slightly weaker defence there. Maybe an opportunity for Eric Dyer. I think he's 4.2, 4.3 million. So if you want to pick up a Spurs defender for cheap, that is possible there. And Richarlison's going to be out for weeks as well. Maybe 4 weeks for Richarlison before we see him back. So Brennan Johnson at a cheap price is going to be playing very, very regularly, you would imagine. Romero is also suspended for 3 games, as we know, and Udogie is going to be suspended for 1 game. So once again, all of these players you would be looking to sell from Spurs. It's time to remove those Spurs assets. It could have an impact on how well Son would do as well, but I would not remove Son personally. But outside of that, particularly in defence, it might be time to just sell the lot of them. But Porro is available at least. So if you've got Porro, you know, at least you've got him available, I guess. West Ham, Zuma, he's going to be assessed. He's we're not sure if he's going to be available or not. Paqueta and Alvarez, they are going to be available after their suspension they served in Game Week 11 for those yellow cards. There's no new injury concerns around West Ham. So reasonably good news for West Ham. And for Wolves, we have got Neto, who is hopefully going to be back in Game Week 13, but is not a guarantee, but he's making good progress. Hodge is still out, and Bueno is back as well. So those are the press conferences. What are we going to do with this information? Well, we've probably got to make some transfers, right? Let's go through that. All right, let's start off with the defender replacements, because we've got Van der Ven, we've got Romero, we've got Udogie, we've got Byrne, we've got many other players who are injured or unavailable right now, and we'll be looking for replacements. So these are my personal favourites in order, starting off with Gabriel. He is a really cheap way into an elite defence with great fixtures. There's no problem with going for Gabriel. A lot of Arsenal fans and Arsenal correspondents are not worried about Gabriel's minutes or whatsoever. He was only rested in the super easy game against Sheffield United because he had played so much football, including over the international break. So that rest is hopefully going to mean that Gabriel is now ready to just have a stint of playing every single game for a long, long time to come. So no problem with going for him. If you do want someone who's slightly more nailed, slightly more bonus point potential, but with less attacking potential, but maybe costs a little bit more, 0.5 more in fact, then Saliba is also an option. I think he's a very good pick as well, but because of the price difference, I do slightly prefer Gabriel. I'm not worried about Gabriel. I know some of you guys will be, but I'm not. If you are, then maybe Saliba is the answer to you. So Lascelles, he is a cheap short-term fix whilst Botman is out. It's unknown how long he's going to start for because we don't have information about Botman. But an interesting point a few people have made is that Botman is a similar profile to Byrne. So we could actually see Botman playing on the left-hand side of the defence and Lascelles continue to get game time, but that's going to be a little bit risky. There's going to be some rotation there at the very least. But I can see how trying that out in order to keep Trippier in his natural right-back position. For Mitchell, he's a pretty good option, as is Gahey. Both nice, cheap Crystal Palace defenders, and they are good for the next 4 game weeks. After that, the fixtures turn horrible. So kind of like Lascelles, these Crystal Palace defenders are not long-term solutions. They are, you know, at best rotation options after the next 4 game weeks, but they certainly will do a good job for you in the short term. And we've got Livramento. If you fancy taking a risk, high risk, high reward, he is a huge rotation risk, and I don't particularly recommend going for rotation risk players during the heavy schedule around kind of, you know, December. Super heavy schedule, often a lot of rotation. The rotation risk players are kind of the players I would be looking to avoid personally, but there is a possible reward there. We could see Livramento play on the left back, right back, could be playing further up the pitch. We're not sure. Could be playing anywhere. So there is opportunity there at the very least. So obviously with Maddison out and potentially Saka out, we're going to be looking at some other midfielders, right? So these are the numbers. I've got a table of stats, Opta stats, from the Fantasy Football Hub website. If you want to check this website out and get a free trial to Fantasy Football Hub, you can check it out using the link in the description and get access to this and play around with the information as much as you want and look at even more players as well. But certainly the players standing out are Mbeumo, Saka, Eze and Bowen. They have the best numbers per game if we combine like XG, XA, etc. They're looking really, really good so far this season, as long as they are playing, as long as they are starting. So they're the real standouts. I've got Bruno Fernandes, I've also highlighted here. He plays against Luton, so that could be an interesting one at the very least. Always nice to get a penalty taker in your FPL team as well. And Diaby is actually not such a bad pick either. If you already own Diaby, I would be keeping him. If you want to move to him, I think that is a potential option as well, but I certainly do prefer 3 certain players. So let's go through those. So for my Maddison replacements, there are 3 players, and I own Maddison, and I'm going to have to replace Maddison. I am doing it. I've narrowed it down to these 3 players. The only other player who wasn't on the previous page and isn't on this page either is Martinelli, as maybe a risky differential. But the 3 sensible options in my mind are Bowen. We know he's available. We know he's fit. He's got great fixtures over the next 2 games. The 14 and 15 fixtures against Palace and Spurs aren't so great, but Forest at home, Burnley away in the next 2. I definitely like these, and Bowen is putting up some really good numbers, playing really well. He is the top scorer of these players, so that is really, really interesting stuff. And Mbeumo, I actually don't think is such a bad pick. I know some people are worried about the bad fixtures against Liverpool and Arsenal. I'm not personally worried about that one too much, to be honest. I think Liverpool, you know, on the counter-attack, and Mbeumo could do some damage there down the right-hand side. That could be quite dangerous, actually. And you've got penalties there as well, which you never know when you're going to pick up penalty points. I think the Arsenal fixture for Mbeumo is a little bit more difficult, but then after that, the fixtures for Brentford are amazing all the way up until their game week 18 blank. So Mbeumo is a nice player to own over the next sort of 6 game weeks. Really, really do like him. And if he's a player you think you're going to get in eventually anyway, why not use this Maddison injury as an opportunity to get him now? Get yourself prepared, get yourself ready. You have that player in place, ready to go. Then future transfers you can use on other areas of your team. So yeah, I do like Mbeumo. I don't think he's actually as bad as many people think for the next 2 fixtures. And after that, it looks amazing all the way up till his blank. So yeah, definitely a really, really interesting player to go for. And also I've put in Saka here. I know a lot of people are not going to be willing to take the risk on bringing in Saka when he is flagged, when we're unsure about his fitness. But I still don't fully mind it. And that's for 2 reasons. One, I kind of mentioned before, I actually think there is a good chance that Saka will play this game week. I would say it's slightly more than 50-50. I'd say it's like 51% chance Saka starts, 49% he doesn't. I know that's not super helpful, but when we're looking at replacing Maddison, Maddison's out for the long term. So we need to find a long-term replacement, right? And maybe Saka is going to be the answer to that, and you can get him in. Even if he's not available for 12, and that's the worst case scenario, after that, he's going to be fine. And there's plenty of great fixtures for Arsenal in the long term, and he's a kind of a set and forget player in your team you can just have and hold. So there is these players, I like these the most, and kind of Martinelli as a differential as well. There is also an opportunity to go for Bowen for the next 2 game weeks and then switch to an Mbeumo or Saka. That's your other option, but that is booking in a transfer a little bit. But certainly Bowen is standing out to me the most right now as the best Maddison replacement. So that's probably the sensible place to go right now if you own Maddison. Switch him to Bowen. If I had Saka though, as I say, I don't think I would remove him. Okay, a quick look at an updated Game Week 12 wildcard draft. It's got a 98% team rating on the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool. It costs 100.7 million and it looks good for several game weeks. So this team has Johnston, Trippier, Gabriel, Mitchell in the kind of back line. We've got Son, Salah and Gordon in midfield there. And we've got Saka in at the moment. He could potentially swap to Bowen if you're uncomfortable with Saka. And we've got Palmer as that final player there. Again, a player you've brought in now in order to hold him for the long term. You know, Mbumo would be a similar kind of player. I wouldn't mind swapping Gordon and Saka from Mbumo and Bowen, potentially, for example. And up front, we've got Haaland and Darwin there, who would be my two preferred forwards to go for right now. Lascelles is on the bench, and aside from that, it's a pretty cheap bench, really. Nothing else too interesting going on there. So, yeah, if you're wildcarding right now or looking to build towards a certain team, this would be my, close to my ideal team. I would hope to put a little bit more money in it, if you have it, just to get Mbumo in your team, for example, maybe for Gordon. But aside from that, really, really like this. So a quick word on differentials. We've already mentioned Martinelli, but let's go through all of these. In defence, we've got the cheap option, Livramento. Medium option, Mitchell. Actually, I have to say, Crystal Palace defence is still fairly differential. So if you do have a Crystal Palace defender and you can pick up some clean sheet points, you know, you're going to get an advantage there because not a lot of people are in on the Crystal Palace's defence quite yet. We've got Ben White, pretty expensive. If you are, you're in it, you've got a team that has no Haaland in it for whatever reason, and you have a little bit of cash to splash, then maybe Ben White is going to be a nice option there. For midfielders, we've got Gordon as your cheap guy. Kudus, really like him as a 6.5 million differential. He's doing really well at the moment. He's a nice alternative to Bowen for a little bit cheaper price, and he's looking good, really good at the moment, and I like the fixtures. And we've got Martinelli. Yeah, looks good. I think Martinelli's a really, really interesting differential, particularly for this game week. In the forward slot, we've got Archer. He plays against Brighton, who, as we know, have a lot of new injury problems, so maybe Sheffield United can actually get something out of this game. I don't know, just putting it out there, but he's certainly a nice, cheap player that you could maybe consider playing. You know, if you have Saka in your team right now and you have Archer first on your bench, I'd be fine with that. Just you know, play Saka, and if it doesn't work out, you've got Archer there to come on. Højlund against Luton could be pretty interesting. Luton do concede a lot of chances down central position, so maybe Højlund can finally score some goals in the Premier League after scoring so many in Europe. And Erling Haaland, bit of tongue-in-cheek here, really. But yeah, Haaland is now down to like 80% ownership. He's quickly becoming a differential, you know? It's crazy to say, but he really, really is. But yeah, a little bit of a joke there, I guess. There's not too many forwards I'm interested in, but Haaland is quickly becoming a differential. What are you guys' thoughts on that one? A quick look at the goalkeeper start order. So if you have two goalkeepers in your team, look for your two goalkeepers on this list, and whoever is higher up on this list is the one I think you should play personally. So Raya at the top, Pope at the top, Johnston at the top. Love these kind of players, really nice fixtures. And then if you've got like some certain other players like Flecken and Sanchez, Leno, you know, these kind of players I would hope not to play. We've got Turner here, who I don't expect to play if I'm totally honest, but you know, maybe start him and hope he starts, I guess, over some of those other guys. Areola's got a decent fixture against Forest, but still not totally convinced by the West Ham defence, so certainly would not be prioritising him ahead of a lot of the other goalkeepers available to us. So there's your goalkeeper start order. If you're wondering who to bench out of your outfield players, we will be covering that using the bench list in the deadline stream tomorrow, so look forward to that. Game Week 12 captains is an absolute minefield, and I don't think there's a right answer. I think there's loads of different right answers, and all different players have, you know, different reasons to go for them. Salah is the default choice. If you can't decide, just go for Salah. He is the sensible template, popular choice that most people will be going for. So he's the safe choice if you don't want to take a risk, you don't want to make a decision. But I do think if you do want to take a risk, a game week like now, where there is such a split, is the game week to do it. Haaland is going to be a differential captain this week, which is very, very nice. We know he has that ability to score against anyone. We know he's fully available now. Scored 2 goals in the midweek Champions League game as well against Chelsea. I know they're a tough defence, but I back Haaland against anyone. So Salah and Haaland would, to me, be the most sensible and safe options. But there's no problem going elsewhere. Son without Maddison is a bit of a concern, but I still think this game against Wolves and the form that Son has still might mean he could get something out of this game. He's just a great player, right? We've got Watkins, who I would probably say is my third favourite choice after Salah and Haaland. He plays against Fulham at home. We know Aston Villa are amazing at home. Watkins is disappointed in the last 2 game weeks, but actually, I think he's going to get back to business in this game, and we could see Villa score a lot of goals against a slightly weaker Fulham defence. Playing at home, there's a lot of things going his way at the moment, so actually, could be interesting differential that not a lot of people will be willing to go for after the blank. Really good pick, I think. And we've got Saka. If he plays, if he starts, if he gets 90 minutes, if he's fine to play against Burnley, then he's probably going to do pretty well. The question is, will he be playing? It's a super risky one at this point because we don't know Saka's availability, but you have to put him in the conversation because if he is, if we knew Saka was 100% playing tomorrow, he would probably be up there with Salah and Haaland in terms of best captain pick. So it's a real risk that I personally would not be willing to take, but I do think he is worth a shout as well. A few other players you could think about captaining, the likes of Trippier or Gordon against Bournemouth, for example, and I'm sure there's a endless list of other kind of players you might be thinking about captaining as well. But, you know, if you want to play it safe, Salah. If you want to go a little bit different, Haaland. If you want to go super different, Watkins, I actually really like as a differential shout for captain. So I'm pretty sure that covers everything for this game week. If you did enjoy this one, make sure you drop a like. Really helps out the channel and shows me that you guys are appreciating the content right now. Do subscribe if you haven't done already. You want regular stuff. And make sure you've got notifications on, ready for our deadline stream tomorrow morning where we cover all of the final news, get the final news from Spurs, early team news, and all of that good stuff. But hopefully I'll see a few of you guys there. If you've got time, check out another video. There's loads of other Game Week 12 videos on the channel that might help you make your decisions. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again. And I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.